It's time for a movie review. I watched this movie some time back. I'm still trying to get up to date. I don't think it's ever going to happen. But anyway, let's get on with it. It's The Indian Runner, released in 1999. And it was the directorial debut of one Sean Penn, who was also responsible for the script. The movie was inspired by the song Highway Patrolman by Bruce Springsteen. And there is a slide going through the rest of the relevant people in the production, and of course cast members. Principally, the two main roles, brothers. David Morse plays Joe, he's a police officer, and Viggo Mortensen plays Frank, and he is returning from his stint in Vietnam, and the movie basically follows how these two relate, interact, and get on with their lives, so to speak, with their respective partners. I'll get on to it now. There will be, of course, a slide with the cast members on that for your perusal. Okay. Well, Patrolman, the haunting Bruce Springsteen song. I think it was on Nebraska that this film's based on, The Indian Runner. It tells of the troubled love between two brothers, Joe, the police officer, and how he struggles to reconcile his civic duties with the responsibilities he feels towards his kin, mainly his younger brother Frankie. Now, Frankie's a very violent and unpredictable brother, and he makes life extremely difficult for Joe, and we follow that as the script unfolds. And as Mr. Springsteen put it narratively, desolately from Joe's standpoint, I got a brother named Frankie, but Frankie ain't no good. The film opens with three images of death. First of all, we see the death of a deer by a marksman who's using the hunting rifle for fun. And then we see a cop killing a criminal on the run. That cop is Joe. The criminal has a weapon, but has no idea how to use it other than point it at the cop, Joe. And of course, Joe is an excellent marksman, and he kills the guy stone dead. And the third is a Vietnam vet returning from a war zone, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. He gets involved in killing and all the anger and violence that he's witnessed in Southeast Asia come pouring out, and of course that suggests that the US government is partly responsible for that murder. Of course, he's a very political animal, and that third killing is definitely a reflection of that obsession that the US government had in ridding the world of communism following the end of the Second World War. Anyway, from there on we follow the lives of Joe and Frankie with their respective female partners after he returns from Vietnam. He's coming back for R&R, but there's no hint that he's going to return, although that's not totally clear. The focus of the movie is on unravelling Frankie's disturbed behaviour, and for Joe to examine how far his family loyalty should stretch, with Frankie continually being self-centred, irresponsible and unpredictable with both his family and within the community. Early on, Frankie chooses to avoid seeing his parents and prefers to hit the bars, gets intoxicated and mixes with high-spirited women. The parents, particularly his father, played by Charles Bronson, justify this by just saying, "Oh, that's Frankie, he's always been like this." So Frankie is away approximately 6 months from his family, and then his mother dies, but he's not around to hear that news, but he's later told, following his latest girl, Dorothy, played by Patricia Arquette, who contacts the family to tell them that Frankie is with her. She's then gives a hint as to where they are, and Joe seeks him out after finding that he's spending a brief stay in prison in the cop station for assaulting Dorothy. So Joe waits upon release, and the pair go to a hotel to stay, and so Joe then makes contact with his brother and tells him about the mother's death. Initially, there's hardly any reaction from Frankie. He's clearly been comatose by his experience of seeing death in Vietnam, and he shows no impact outwardly. Again, Joe makes allowances for his brother, but the disturbed reaction isn't far away. The atmosphere is extremely tense and dark, and one senses that Frankie might explode at any time. And Joe's very wary of this, and we see that in their facial imagery on that visit. By both Morse and Mortensen is absolutely gripping. Mortensen is very frightening, and it's resembled a little bit for me of Jack Nicholson in The Shining with those eyes, the psychosis. Arquette is a bubbly young mixture of love and slight manic mania, but she's besotted by Frankie and his manly strength, but she's also sees the darker side of his personality. We witness Frankie fireballing a car just to get some kicks out of pyromania, and then there's a chilling phone call by the father advising Joe on some DIY, and this leads to a visit by Joe. It leads to a visit by a colleague to Joe's house, informing him that his father has turned a weapon on himself and he has killed himself. And this is a very dark, sinister aspect to this tale of an irreparable, psychologically damaged family. But we don't unravel much of the early family life and why the brothers are so radically different in temperament and self-discipline. The father's death, again, Frankie's response is hardly what one could describe as normal. But Joe tries to be calm and unselfish as we move forward. Frankie then appears to get his act together. Dorothy becomes pregnant. Frankie gets a construction job, regular money, but there are some still bizarre moments. A trip out to the forest by Joe and Frankie regresses into somewhat childlike behaviour by Frankie, and he starts playing with the shotgun and threatening his own suicide, mimicking his father's death maybe. Penn doesn't relent on the personality disorder, and we see Frankie completely losing it over some steak on his dinner plate with Dorothy. First the silent treatment, and then spitting out the food to tell Dorothy what he thinks about her not competing with him genuinely about his recent efforts to calm down. Complimenting him about his recent efforts to calm down and get on with his work. Move to a local bar, and we get the first sight of the bartender, who's one Dennis Hopper, and shortly after his introduction there's some more violence between Frankie and the bartender, and Joe has to rescue Frankie from a very serious problem. There are glimpses of Frankie breaking down in tears, as clearly his mental state has become deeply disturbing. The PTSD is definitely taking over here, or something possibly even more sinister. Penn uses music very effectively. Summertime, sung by Janis Joplin, maximises the melancholic feel and rush through Frankie's veins, and the plane is now fully immersed. The birth of the child becomes imminent, but it's all too much for Frankie as he hides himself in the bar again, treading even closer into psychosis. And the mere thought of being present at the bloody arrival of the infant and witnessing the pain and adulation is quite beyond him. The violent event takes place and he flees with his brother chasing behind. It's very much a rerun of the opening scene, but this time it's his brother, and the reenactment stops just short as Frankie gets back in the car and drives off into the distance. A remarkable film. I've watched it 3 times now, and the performance by Mortensen is absolutely 5-star. It does ask more questions than supplying answers, but I think this is Penn deliberately doing this, and he's focusing very much on the impact of the Vietnam combat, the war experience in the jungle, and the lack of proper psychiatric care for those returning home and not being viewed as either victors or heroes. Mortensen's performance, as I say, is a standout, and as they say, he used this to launch his acting career, later moving on to Lord of the Rings, and then a host of 5-star films, many of which I have watched, and Falling, his recent one, I have reviewed, and it's on this channel, so take a look at it. Okay, that's my review of The Indian Runner, written and directed by Sean Penn and starring Viggo Mortensen and David Morse, and it was released in 1991. Have I got that?